here? Okay. It's kind of glitching. It's going in and out by the looks of it. All right, I'm going to try. Okay, it is. All right, great. We are still live on Facebook. So I don't know if it's just, it's dropped off and then just dropped back on, but we're here. So if you've just joined us, we are here live with Peter Baines, charity founder of Hands Across the Water, global expert on leadership, trauma and resilience, international speaker, and just an all right, amazing human being. I reached out to him yesterday to have a chat about what do we do at times like this? Because obviously there's like a world of devastation all across Australia. New South Wales, I believe, has seen the hardest of it all, but it's spread across Tasmania. And I mean, I don't know if you've seen that satellite image, Peter, of the globe, and then Australia is just a big red glow. You, as I said in the intro, have had decades dealing with life and death and trauma. Conditions for you and your farm at the moment are better than what they were, which is great. But what are people likely to be experiencing that are literally walking in situations that looks apocalyptic right now? What would be their mental state and their emotional levels right now?
Yeah, I think it will. It'll obviously vary between the different people, and I think the circumstances that led to their either evacuation or their the removal from their property, and how much time they had to prepare, and how much knowledge they had of the impending the fires. And the mindset up in our community was that we've been on edge and dealing with this since early November. And so it's been 2 months that we've had to get our properties right, to get our heads right, to get all of the things that we see are irreplaceable out of our homes, where what we've seen over the last few days is footage of people who have had, in some instances, days or hours. And so I think the mindset of returning to the property will be different depending upon the time that they had to prepare for what was coming for them.
So for those that have had like days or hours even to prepare, what are they like? Because I know there's going to be stages of, shock and grief and anger and all of the above. What are they likely to, what is the human journey from when they go from days or hours dealing with something like that? What are they likely to navigate, and how can their family members or relatives in other states best support them over the coming weeks, months, and even years?
Yeah, I think you're right to talk about those stages, and there's plenty of literature on the stages of grief, and this is exactly what they'll be going through. There'll be that there'll be a gratefulness that they've survived, but then it'll shift to then a recognition of what they've lost. And in some circumstances, it'll be that the family members have been lost. It'll be their home that has been lost. It'll be everything that they own besides the clothes on their back, their animals, and there'll be various stages that they will go through. Your question around what family can do, what friends and community can do, I think it's about making a long-term commitment. And there's plenty of people who respond immediately. And I've worked in crisis areas in Indonesia, Thailand, Japan, Saudi Arabia, Australia, and there's the common thing that happens after crisis is that there'll be this immediate outpouring of support, and you've spoken about people making financial donations, and in some cases that's probably the easiest, the quickest, and the most effective contribution. But what also happens is the story of the loss and the devastation and the impact will pass from the media, and it'll pass from our thought process. And but the people who have been left either having suffered a loss or of a family member or a partner, those who have lost their homes, those who have lost, you know, their family home of 30 years or so forth, they don't get over it just because we stop talking about it, just because it's not on the media anymore, just because we move into winter and the thoughts of fire and drought are long behind us. And so I think as family members, we need to, and community, we need to consider that, and we need to be able to talk about it as well. It's a bit like after you go to a funeral, and how many people say, "I'm here, just give me a call if you need," and they say that on the day and they mean it, but then very quickly they return home and they forget. And then they'll see that person, they'll walk down the street, and then they'll stop and think, "Oh, this is going to be awkward. What do I say?" You know, Tant has just lost someone. How do we have this conversation? So they avoid it. But just because we avoid the conversation doesn't mean that it's not, the circumstances are not real.
Yeah, I guess it's the same thing with birth too. I was what came to mind as you were talking is, you know, when a couple have a new baby, you usually get a couple of meals delivered. Someone might come and want some, you know, washing and get rid of the nappies, and then that's great, and you know, because that you know, beautiful new phase, and then there's the reality that kicks in, and it can be, you know, quite lonely for new, especially new parents. So obviously so your message there is really, there's a lot of immediate help that is happening at the moment. Australian comedian Celeste Barber has, within a matter of days, rallied people from all around the globe, and is over $30 million in funds raised, which is awesome. We're seeing Australian celebrities donating, you know, their future tennis winnings, and Pink donated 500,000. So that the immediate stuff is being well taken care of, and our emergency services are also being looked after. I agree with you that the work to be done is, how do we then rebuild for the future, not only the physical dwellings, but just rebuild the confidence and the sense of security in what is devastating loss for people. So your message is, you know, as winter kicks in and the drought and the fires is no longer, pardon the pun, a hot topic, you know, even though our personal intentions are there to reach out and connect, you literally may need to literally put it in the calendar or put a reminder in your phone, some kind of strategy to keep those people that have been affected top of mind, to keep connected. And one of the best ways that you can support areas that have been devastated is to go there and either help rebuild and donate some time, or when the towns do rebuild themselves, give them your tourist dollar. Go and buy some bread there. Go and camp in the local grounds. You know, go and, you know, be there if and when those businesses are up and thriving again. So we've talked about the survivors of the areas. Let's talk about, because this is where you've got a lot of experience and I'm very keen to get your awareness around, the emergency services team that are in kind of constant fight, flight, free or freeze, survival, adrenalized, you know, let's take care of our community conditions, that are sleep deprived, that are breathing in carcinogenic properties and thankfully getting the masks. What, you know, when I first heard your story about walking amongst the debris of bodies in Thailand, and after watching Impossible, the movie that does highlight what happened in the tsunami in Thailand, is it realistic, that video?
Absolutely.
It is, right? Because I watched that to kind of give myself some perspective, because as you know, I'm joining the other 99 real estate riders for Digital Live Ride that kicks off at the 26th of February. You have a Ride for Life happening at the moment. Claire Baines is over there with a team of 26. This is the first time, I think, in 12 years or 13 years you've missed the first few days, but you're heading over in a few days, which is awesome, as your sons look after your farm. What's going to be the headspace of the emergency services team? Because this is not just an average house fire. This is, some of these flames are 14 meters high. And when I first, you know, watched some footage of you talking with Tom Panos about, you know, identifying 5,300 bodies, I literally had visions of like you walking over people and picking up rubble. And, you know, there was, I think, one area that had 3,500 really decayed bodies. Like, I can't imagine what that imprint is like and what it takes to be someone that can put themselves aside to be of service in such traumatic conditions. Can you talk us through the mindset of the emergency services team and what that takes to do the job?
Yeah.
B, what do they need and what does it take for them post something as traumatic as the tsunami, as our bushfires?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things that I certainly observed working in these areas, and the response into Thailand with the bodies that you talk about was over 12 months. And for 2005, most of my year was spent either in Thailand or preparing teams or myself to go back to Thailand. So it was a constant rotation backwards and forwards. And one of the things that I observed or come to recognize was occurring was this four stages that workers were going through, and I called it this crisis clock. And it was the first quarter is when you turn up and you're in that frantic stage, and there's so much adrenaline going on, and there's all of the questions of unknown, and there is that you know, that adrenaline and that immediacy of the crisis.
Yeah.
The second stage is when it becomes a bit more controlled, when you've got control over it, you know where to go, you know what to do. There is that routine, there is the systems in place. The three-quarter stage is always the most difficult. And this is just project management, but it's project management in crisis, in my opinion. And that three-quarter stage is the most difficult stage when people are tired, the energy's low, things have become routine, mundane. You don't have the, you know, the support and the interest from the media, and that's hyping it all up. And then the final stage to this is the fourth quarter, which is the exit stage, where you're finishing up and the energy comes up. And that for us in Thailand was, when we look at those four stages, was we had people flying to Thailand from around the world. We had 36 different countries, 450 forensic leaders who came to work there. And flying into Thailand, you know, you've got questions of, will I be able to speak well, I can't speak the language, so how will I get through? What's it going to be like? Do I have the skills? Who do I report to? Who reports to me? How does the day work? How do I get around? How do I deal with all of this? All of these questions that drive this unknown and energy in you. But by the second week of our 4-week tour, for example, you knew where to go, you knew the systems, you weren't, someone else had come in, so you weren't the new kid on the block anymore, you knew who reported to you, and you had these systems in place, and you're still feeling good. But the third week for us was when you were tired of doing the same thing. You were missing your family, missing home, you know, walking into the restaurant for breakfast every morning to see this amazing buffet. You'd go and have a bowl of cereal because you were sick of it, you know. You were sick of the whole thing, and the interest was gone, and it just became your job. But the energy in that fourth week came up again because we knew that we were about to go home and someone was coming back in. So I think one of the things as leaders in leading teams through this, and this might be a family, and the parents leading the family through it, is to know that we're going to go through different stages of it. And when I talk to teams about leading their teams, or talk to leaders about leading their teams through this, I say it's okay that when we get to the three-quarter stage, that the energy's gone, that we don't have the dignitaries coming in to shake our hand, whether we want to shake hands or not.
Yeah.
When we've got, when all of that's gone, the energy's going to be low, but that's okay, because we just recognize that this is where they are. They're at that three-quarter stage, but to know, well, and that's when we need to look at what are the motivation, how do we motivate our teams in times like this? And your question back to, well, how did we do this type of thing in Thailand? And it's again connecting back into what's most important. So for us, it was around returning bodies to families. And our day from waking up in the morning to when we finished work at night was to deal with death. And when we're spending our day carrying the bodies of children, of mothers, of fathers, and just seeing these broken families, we know that amongst the 3,500 decomposing bodies that we've got on the ground in front of us, that their families and their loved ones are in there somewhere. And that was our day. Every day we had to deal with that. So you've got to find strategies around how to deal with it.
So
say that again.
What are those strategies? Like, because I know you said, you know, the best and hardest thing of your job was working for the families. So working for the families, and then, you know, working for the families, because you're just delivering devastating news on a daily basis. That takes a lot of resilience in yourself. How do you access that ability to be compassionate enough to speak with another human about the loss of a significant other, and kind of park your own emotional landscape to not be overwhelmed and unaffected? How do you do that on an individual level? And how do you, as a leader, in that third quarter piece, what do you say to your people? Literally, what do you say to them? I love that you say, Peter, that you acknowledge that here we are, like, this is normal. This is normal to actually feel the high and the adrenaline and be, you know, have your adrenals fuel inject you to be of service. And then after a period of time and boring cereal and the reality of it's a long burn and, you know, there's a long stretch ahead and you're missing your family. What do you say to your family members? Sorry, to your team members to keep going?
Yeah, I think that there's it's really important to have your clarity of purpose, and then to understand, and this is where there's a difference here, is the work that the teams that I was leading in Thailand and then working with in Japan and Indonesia and so forth. We were forensic investigators who dealt with death basically on a weekly basis, where what we're seeing here is people have been exposed to a level of trauma and crisis and disaster which is so beyond their normal. And so we've got the RFS, who are made up of volunteers, and the challenges that they've been facing are unprecedented in the size and the duration of that they've been called upon to do this. And so part of that is, I think there is a difference here where this was our job 7 days a week, was to deal with this kind of work. We were in a different country and we were dealing with it on a scale which was, the work that we did in Thailand was unprecedented. It was the largest disaster victim identification attempt ever undertaken and remains so. But the fundamentals of what we were doing were basic forensic science, and it was our job. So I think that there is a difference there. But your question of, well, then how do you motivate those teams in that third quarter? And I think part of it is around just acknowledging that that's where it is. But then it's also the case of looking at tapping back into why we're there. And it's the case of, you know, for us, as you said, I've often said the most difficult experience I had was dealing with the families, and but the most rewarding experience I had was dealing with the families. And the challenge for us was that we couldn't, we as forensic practitioners, we couldn't grieve over the body, every body that we did, because you simply wouldn't survive in that environment. But you can't be so detached that you forget that every person that you're dealing with is someone's mother or daughter or son or brother or husband. And so there's finding that balance. And sometimes it was overwhelming, and it was simply a case of taking some time out, being together as a team, and having strategies. And the strategies will be different depending upon your time, your location, your makeup, what you do. We weren't at the end of each day able to go home and be with our families and
That
connect with our
different
children.
and yeah.
All we had was ourselves, and so we formed some very strong bonds together, and it was a case that when there was an opportunity not to be so serious, when there was an opportunity to have some downtime, that we took it and we did what was energizing and important and refreshing for us. And but again, they will be different depending upon the circumstances and what you have around you.
So I imagine, when you were in Thailand and leading your team, and then you have 36 different people, people from 36 different locations come, that clarity and communication and coordination of logistics and efforts is key. Otherwise, you have human resources dispersed and not able to be as effective.
Mm-hmm.
We know that Scott Morrison, our Prime Minister, is getting some flack for the lack of leadership and lack of empathy. I, like you, agree that now's not the time to dissect whether he's a solid leader or not. Now's the time just to roll up our sleeves and get into action. However, I am curious, someone who has led teams, national and international teams, through crisis, someone that has had to literally rally the troops to work towards a common goal under really difficult conditions. If you were in his position, what would you have done differently, or what would you have done to handle the situation that's happening in Australia?
Tanja, I think it beggars belief that we had the Prime Minister leave the country and fly to Hawaii as this was unfolding, and be on the beach in his board, he's hanging with the tourists, thinking he's one of the cool kids. He's not one of the cool kids. He's the Prime Minister of the country, and and no different for David Elliott, the Minister for Emergency Services in Australia, who flew out on the Monday to London in the height of this. This is not two leaders who have been caught overseas and this has evolved. They've made a conscious decision to leave at the time that this was all unfolding, to leave our country, to leave their post, to take a holiday. And David Elliott's gone to the other side of the world, flown there on the Monday, and then come home on the Friday and said, "Oh, I've made a mistake." It beggars belief. Well, I just can't understand what these people are thinking, and their advisors, as who says to them, and what conversation is going on in their head where they go, "I'm the leader of this country, I'm the leader of the most important ministry within the state at this time, but I'm going to take a holiday, I'm going to leave and go overseas." The thing that stands out in leaders in times like this, and we can look back over many international crises and we can see how leaders have been remembered. Did they not learn anything from the way that Christine Nixon was crucified during the Victorian bushfires of 2009, where 173 people lost their lives? Christine Nixon went out for dinner on the night a lot of people died, and she will be forever tarnished because of her actions. Now, the learning here is that as leaders, we don't have to have all the answers. We don't have to bring about change. There's no expectation that the Prime Minister put these fires out. The expectation is that we have our leaders present. Because then it says you care, and it says that you understand the challenges. By flying out to London or flying out to Hawaii to take a holiday, it says two things: you don't care and you don't understand the challenges that are being faced. And I think ever since the Prime Minister's been back, what we've seen is mistake after mistake because of his lack of empathy and lack of leadership.
Yeah, and I know he's receiving a lot of flack that he's gone and done an ad campaign to talk about what he has done to try and rectify the perception of what he hasn't. But, people believe they don't believe the message unless they believe the messenger. And what is happening now is he's lost a lot of credibility because, he vacated the building at a time when it was on fire, and is now coming back, and it seems like there's an egoic agenda rather than a service orientated agenda, and that's obvious in his body language. I agree with you. and this is a great lesson because we have a lot of, you know, principals and directors that tune in, and a lot of them are my clients, and I'm super passionate about leadership, which is why I'm so grateful that you said yes to this conversation, because leadership is a privilege, not a right. And in these times where it's really tough is where it tests our core essence as a leader, and you can see where we stand, or where we don't stand, and if it's self-orientated or service-orientated. So if you were Prime Minister in this situation, what would be the things that you would do, having led national and international teams with 36 other key forensic investigators from other countries to come? Like that takes a lot of coordination and communication. There were I think ministers or people in New South Wales that didn't even know he was coming. There were visits that were, you know, uncommunicated, and you can clearly see the disappointing footage of Scott Morrison forcing a pregnant woman to actually shake his hand whilst the cameras were rolling. That demonstrates a massive lack of empathy. So if you were in his shoes, you wouldn't be in thongs or bare feet in Hawaii. No doubt about it. What would you have done if you were Scott Morrison?
Yeah, I think it's not useful for me to second guess around the strategy and the deployment of resources and things like that. And I think, you know, the best thing we can do is leave that to those who have been in the informed position, and no doubt there'll be an inquiry or royal commission into how this has all played out. And having been involved in many crises and disasters, and then being involved in subsequent reviews of our actions at the time, it's always easier in hindsight to sit in judgment in an air-conditioned boardroom and make assessments of what people were doing. And I don't think it's useful for me to make assessments of what people have done there. The only thing I would say is that the point that we've just made is, as leaders, we need to be present. And we look at the Prime Minister for New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, and you know, how she responded after the Christchurch massacre, how she responded after the eruption of the volcano. The things that she shows is that she's decisive, so that she's making decisions, she's taking leadership, and in these times of crisis, it's easier to make no decision than to make a tough decision. But that's what our leaders are expected. We expect decisions from them, and it doesn't mean that you'll get every decision right. And if you wait until you've got all of the information before you make a decision, well, the opportunity might pass you by. So we need courage in our leaders, and we need them to be present, and we need them to demonstrate empathy, we need them to demonstrate compassion. But as I keep saying, the most important thing we need is our leaders to be present. And we see that in the Premier of New South Wales, who is there. And it's not about this photo opportunity for her. It's she's there, she's working behind the scenes. The same with the Commissioner of the Rural Fire Service. Can you imagine him, you know, checking out this afternoon saying, well, guys, I'm off to Bali. I've got a villa booked at Canggu for a week, and I'll leave you with it. You know, of course, it's as ridiculous as it sounds. That's what our leaders of government have been doing. And the Australian public are forgiving. The Australian public don't expect all our leaders have all of the answers all of the time, but they expect them to care. They expect them to be present. They expect them to be understanding of the challenges that have been faced. And being there to create photo opportunities or to being dismissive of people in times of loss, it doesn't wash. And that's what we're seeing now.
So you're saying courage, empathy, presence, compassion, and decisiveness and responsibility, because responsibility is the ability to respond. And I love that you said before, leaders, you know, don't have to know all the answers and don't have to have immediate solutions, but they must stand in service of being resourceful enough to elicit the people, the resources, the tools, the infrastructure to solve the problems. And what people want more than anything, even before a solution, is to be heard, is to be seen, and is to be gotten. As Dr. Brené Brown talks about, empathy versus sympathy. The best response would have been to that lady, like, to be honest with you, I don't know what I could say right now that could pacify your disappointment. I'm just so glad that you shared this with me, and I'm right here with you. Like, that would have just rocked her world. That's what she needed, to be seen in this situation. So great distinctions around leadership of what you can do, not only in times of trauma, but just in times of, business growth and challenges when the marketplace changes. Because I know you're a business consultant, you travel around the world to speak about and share the stories that you learn, and use them as metaphors for how we can apply them in, on the ground in business. So we know that you and your team, or your team headed up by Claire, is over in Thailand at the moment. How many days are they into their ride in Thailand for a Ride for Life? It's the 26 friends that you've got from all different walks of life.
Yeah. Today will be day 3 on their bike, and yesterday was a half day for them, and it's they're riding through what's called the Isan region of Thailand. It's in the northeast, and it's my favourite part of Thailand. It's the most beautiful part for me, and you ride down the Mekong River, and the first day that they ride is to get to the Mekong from the city of Nong Khai, and they arrive on the Mekong on the first day. Yesterday was a short day for them, but from now until they finish in, so what have they got? They've got another 6 days of riding. They'll be on the Mekong for most of that time, and it's a beautiful part of Thailand where they are.
Beautiful. And you'll head over in a couple of days, as we said earlier. And this is an initiative that you started with Hands Across the Water, it was 12, 13 years ago, based on the work that you did in Thailand. And, many kids were then orphaned as a result of losing their parents and loved ones from the tsunami. And so again, there's so, like, inside of tragedy, through choice and application of energy and just a humanitarian commitment, there's so much good that can happen. And what I also want to acknowledge you for, Peter, is not only did you go in and coordinate the leadership of, the national and international team to identify all the bodies that you did, but you didn't just go, okay, we're done, we're over that serial, we're heading home. You thought about, well, because I know from the interview you did with Tom, you came back, as you said, in your words, a broken man, broken emotionally, broken financially, just broken, to be expected with the conditions, of course, but it feels like you just kind of had nothing left in the tank. And you had a big why. We know in leadership, and we know in business, without a vision, people perish. And so if there is not a why or a North Star for us to follow, we end up aimlessly walking around, wondering how we can be effective. So that's how you started Hands Across the Water. And now 13 years later, how many funds have been raised in total over that time, and how many lives have been changed as a result?
Yeah, thanks. We've raised over 25 million since we started, and the way that we operate is we don't spend any donors' money on administration or fundraising. And the way that we're able to do that was in 2011, I set up a company that sits next to the charity. Now that company undertakes its own commercial activities to raise money and generate income, not through donations, but that underwrites the operating costs of the charity. So therefore, when someone makes a donation, it goes to the kids that we support and the communities that we support and the programs that we run in Thailand.
And it is great to know that, because I've signed up for the Mekong Ride. I'm currently in training. I've never done anything like this before as a physical challenge. And the reason I'm doing it is A, it's a bloody good cause. And why wouldn't we? Because we can. B, I, as a leader and someone that's deeply interested in a mindset for success, I'm always looking to take myself through personal challenges so I can share those lessons and blessings with my clients. And C, I wanted to push myself where I haven't been before, and as Gandhi says, become the change I want to see in the world. So thanks for creating it, because I'm really excited by the opportunity. And I know there's the great work that Steve Carroll has done to get Digital Live Ride up and running, where there's a north and a south ride. We've got, I think, 100 riders all ready to go, and we kick off in, I think, 50 or 48 days or whatever it is. So really looking forward to that opportunity. What, as we wrap up, Peter, what, I know we were talking yesterday about the efforts that you can do to help. And at times of great crisis, people can feel helpless, that they can't give enough or they can't help. I believe that anyone can do anything, even if you're financially strapped. If it's not of service to you to give money, because that's going to put pressure on you and your own family, my invitation is go through the pantry and look at what tins you have that have been maybe sitting there for a while that still have a good expiry date. Go through your bathroom and check out what toiletries you can have. And there's some great work that Lisa Messenger from the Collective Hub are doing to coordinate all local drop-off points and specific needs of, we need 20 masks here, we need 30 mattresses here, we need, garbage bags here. Times like this, I think, and we were talking yesterday, it is common to feel helpless and devastated, and spend our time scrolling through news stories and complaining and talking about the lack of leadership or what you should have, could have, would have gonna done. Action is the thing that's going to make the biggest difference, not only immediate action, but long-term action. And those things, whether it is the bushfire relief, whether it is Ride for Life, or whether it is something that I'm working towards being Digital Live Ride, I think it's about turning that helplessness into resourcewulness, and asking not wish I could do something, but what can I do with what I have? So whether that's donate money, to whether it's Digital Live Ride. And I just also wanted to say, it is I'm very proud to know that I'm representing a charity that every single dollar that gets donated goes directly for the kids. I've set myself a personal challenge of $10,000. After speaking with you, I know that is going to provide a quality life for at least 5 kids for 12 months. Shelter, food, love, support, education. It's a nice, specific example. So what do you believe is possible now, when people may be thinking, what do I do? What do I do to make a difference around the fires? I've seen this Digital Live Ride project and people are asking me to donate. What can I do there? What would you say to people that are considering what they can do, whether it's financially or through other help?
Yeah, I think, again, that will depend upon the circumstances, the capacity and the desire of the individual. And I think it's important for them to find something that deeply resonates. And if it's something that they're looking to make a long-term commitment, you've given some strategies, and we've spoke about where we can make a financial contribution to many of the aid organisations that are supporting the victims of the fires or so forth. And if your contribution is making $100, and if that's your annual budget to support a charity, well, that's fantastic. But if it's something that you want to do a bit longer term, I think it's important then to find something that will provide a return to you personally. Right. And this is where, it was interesting to listen to your reasons for doing the bike ride. And many organisations, and I work with businesses where part of what we do is turn what's known as corporate social responsibility into a profit centre. Because many organisations will have a CSR program where they provide funding to a chosen charity, and they say that's our CSR, that's our corporate social responsibility. But that's not CSR, that's philanthropy. And yes. What I do is turn CSR into a business growth, into a profit center for the business. And the reason for that is because as an individual, if you're profiting, So when we talk about you doing this bike ride, if it grows you as an individual, if it grows your business, if it changes your mindset, if it provides meaning, and if you're banking memories out of it, you're likely to stay and come back and do it again.
Right.
So it's in my interest as the head of the charity is to ensure that those supporting us as individuals or businesses, if they walk away having profited, and that can come in different forms, but if you benefit more than you perceive that you've given, you'll stay. And
Sure.
us as a charity, we will benefit and we will grow the more that you grow out of it. So I think if we're looking at this as an individual, as a principal of a real estate firm, if we're looking to get involved in something, and if it's that one-off donation, we'll do that and that's fine. But if you're looking for that longer term strategy, look at where the return you're going to get. And many in Australia, we have this mindset where we say, well, we shouldn't benefit out of it. I don't want anything in return. And I go, we've got to let that go, because that becomes tied to an emotional response. What we want to do is approach this from a business response, where if you can perceive the benefit you'll get out of it, then you will be more invested, which means that me as a charity, we will then benefit and we will grow and we will have sustainability because you commit long term. When we look at the Digital Live Ride, we look at why Steve Carroll has invested so much in this. It's because of what it's done for him, what he's seen it do for the leaders of industry who were part of Digital Live the first time. Now they're coming back, not necessarily because of the kids, that's a big part of it, but they're coming back because of what it did for them as business leaders, business owners.
Yeah, I love that you are really transparent about that, because that's just a win-win-win-win scenario for all. And I know also from your previous interview, you talk about, you know, you were a broken man when you came back from Thailand, and things have turned around. So you can be philanthropic and charitably minded, but you can set it up successfully as a sustainable business that has a value proposition that is beneficial for all involved. And why wouldn't you? And why would you be ashamed about that? Why wouldn't you be open about that? Because the kids win, the local businesses win, the charity wins in its ability to fulfill on its promise, and then individuals that partake, whether it's the riders or also the people that are fundraising for the riders to head off and go, like, everybody can win because it fulfills what's valuable to you. So I think, and I know you're a business consultant, and I have no doubt that you talk about that specifically. I'd love to, after the ride and after February, if you'd be open to it, Peter, do another conversation around that specific piece, because we know that international research proves that organizations that have that social enterprise blood running through their veins are likely, or more likely, to retain great talent, recruit great talent, especially millennials, because they want to be part of something that has a clear why and a social conscience. And then consumers also value working with organizations that are bigger than just themselves and their own P&L statement. So again, it's a win-win-win for everyone. So if you'd be open to coming back and having that conversation later in the year, we'd love to have you.
Sure, thank you.
Awesome. Well, you know, Peter, I know that you have a lot to prepare for your sons to come and take care of your farm and your livestock, including the little guy that was just born a matter of days ago, a little calf, which is beautiful. If people do want to find out more about the great work, about you as a global speaker and an author, a leadership, trauma, resilience specialist, you know, how can they get in touch with you, and how can they find out more about Hands Across the Water and the great work that you're doing to change the lives of disadvantaged kids?
Yeah, thanks, Tanjo. It's the work that I do with businesses and leaders and so forth, that information is via my website, which is just peterbaines.com.au. And then if they want to learn more about Hands and the work that we do in Thailand and the life of choice we're creating for the kids, it's handsacrossthewater.org.au.
Great. Thanks again for your time this morning. I know you've got a lot on your plate. Have an amazing time with Claire and the team of 26 over, and go and enjoy the ride of a lifetime again for,
Yeah.
is it 13-year running now? And
Yeah, it'll be my 30th ride. So yeah.
30th ride. Wow, that's amazing. And I
Yeah.
really look forward to getting into the saddle and joining the crew in days now in February, and being part of the change that we want to see in the world. Thanks for your lessons about how to rise resilient in times of tremendous trauma, how to be an extraordinary present leader that stands in empathy and courage to make a difference. You don't need to know all the answers. And if you are watching this and you're curious about Peter coming in and sharing some stories from what would be devastating times, and getting some incredible lessons to help fuel inject the performance and productivity and the morale and culture of your team in your business, please check out peterbaines.com.au. Baines spelled B-A-I-N-E-S. We will drop all the links and relative links here on the social media and in our email. Peter, much love to you and your family and your local community, all of Australia as well that are watching. And thanks for just being a pretty amazing bloke. It's great to have people like you waving the Aussie flag internationally, and really glad that you could join us today.
Good on you. Thank you, Tanja.
Take care. See you soon. Check out Hands Across the Water and peterbaines.com.au. We'll see you soon. Thanks, friends. Thanks for tuning in. Have a beautiful Monday. And remember, in the words of the late, great Maya Angelou, people will forget what you said. They'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. So do something today to make yourself and others, especially strangers, feel like they matter, because you never know the stories and personal trials and tribulations that people are navigating in the past or now. And you could just be that little ray of sunshine that they need to give them a pick-me-up for what could be a challenging day. Go be an awesome human. We'll see you soon.